My name is Amber Johnson. I'm the soil conservationist for NRCS here in San Juan County in Utah. I'm a generation removed from the farm. I have a great love and respect for what farmers do. And first started working on cover crops. I was in central Utah, and I had a producer I was working with who had a lot of sheep. Do some cover crops, not just to provide feed, but also to provide more cover over the winter. And all of a sudden, on that field, not only did he not have to feed, he also started noticing these really great soil health benefits. And then thought back on my previous experience, and I started really researching and digging into the soil health. I realized what we needed to do was bring life back into these soils. You know, for 100 years, there'd only been one or maybe two crops grown on them. And any weed that grew was killed immediately. And so it was a little bit of a stretch for some of our guys to do it, but with our cost share, that helps a little bit. It takes some of the risk out of it. But I think the biggest thing is they were mostly worried about whether or not they'd ever be able to farm that field again, and whether or not they'd ever get a crop that made money off of that field again. Because if you're not making money, you can't stay in business. Now, when you read the no-till and the cover crop literature, there's a sort of a list of things that you shall not do. Don't use your worst field. Don't use your weediest field, because it takes a little while for the soil to transition, for your infiltration to come back, for your compaction to be lessened. And if you're not using implements to do that, and you're depending on the biology of the field, the microbiology and the plant roots to increase your infiltration and all of that, it can take a while. And so looking at a couple other places that have been trying this in Utah, we fully expected a 4 to 7 year transition period before we'd start seeing any gains in yields, before we would start seeing reductions in herbicide applications. And we pretty much told everybody, if you're going to do this, it's going to pay off big, but it's going to take a little while. And there's going to be a couple of years where we're going to wonder if this is working or not. And what we found is, even in our really terrible drought years, our no-till fields have had enough moisture, because all of a sudden they start getting more moisture in from the infiltration. And so maybe a no-till field next to a conventionally tilled organic field, they wanted to seed those on the same day. They could seed it or plant it on the no-till field, but they didn't have the moisture conditions correct on the organic field to do it. And so I think adding that flexibility into the system has been good, but I think it's just been so eye-opening for our producers to see, if we reduce our tillage, we have more moisture. If we increase our cover, we have more moisture. The other thing too is that we didn't expect to see any changes at all for 4, 5, 6 years. And we've been seeing some changes, some significant changes within a couple of years. Now, they're not perfect yet, and they may not ever be perfect. I don't know if they'll ever out-compete as far as yield and protein, but what I'm hoping is that the economic base on those fields balances out. And I think this SARE grant is going to be really useful, because instead of just having anecdotal evidence, we're going to have some things that we can actually point to say, we've seen this change over time and we've seen this change over time. What I expect to see is, you know, right now we've pretty much got every early adopter involved in these types of projects. And we've got a lot of people on the fence, a lot of people that are asking questions, a lot of people that are interested but not sure if they're willing to take the risk. So what I hope to see long term is the ability to say that these things really do work, that we are going to see benefits not just to the soil, because the soil to a farmer is really, really important, but they can't keep farming if they don't make a profit. And so we've got to figure out how we can balance those two things. You know, it's figuring out our cover crop seeding rates. It's figuring out the types of things that are going to grow here, because we don't want to be recommending to people to plant this cover crop if it's just not going to germinate in our climate, or if it's going to die too soon, or if it's not going to get enough production to actually put a benefit on. And so I'm hoping that over time we'll have a lot of those questions answered. The reality of it is people are going to keep doing what works for them as long as they're making a profit and not seeing declines. what we want to do is try a lot of different things and see if on any particular farm those things make a difference, and then we'll have a broader based beginning. I really see this grant and the work that we've been doing the last couple of years as experiments as to whether or not something's feasible.